All good.
Um, it,
Oh,
sh-
no problem.
it should be good now. So I guess really all we missed was the introductions, but we should be good from here on.
Gotcha.
Um,
That works perfect.
okay, cool. So when we talk about like theory, right? When we just as a recap for the recording, that you're scared about getting cornered against Marth and converting into an edge guard, and you find it struggling to deal with this pressure. Um,
Yeah.
so and you said you don't have a Slippy file, right?
I don't have one currently,
Okay,
no.
no, that's no worries. We can keep it mostly theory. And we can also get in a game, and if you want to connect and like talk about scenarios in game too, we can absolutely do that.
That would be
Um,
awesome.
so just in terms of like ideas that you have when playing, like what tools do you usually use to kind of keep yourself from getting cornered?
Full hop, dash back, shield, rolls, mostly those, yeah, and just like trying to wall them out.
Okay, no, that's great. Noticeably absent, which I'm surprised. Maybe it just kind of went over your head because it's so obvious, kind of thing. But
Hmm.
laser, of course, would be your
Oh,
number
hell yeah.
one, right? Like, laser is what makes Falco a good character, right? And I don't mean to say that in like a condescending way. I know some people will say like, "Oh, Falco's so much more than lasering," and it's totally true. But you can't play Falco without lasering, right? It's just never been done.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so that's what this matchup I would argue the most is dependent on is how well can you use lasers and what options are you mixing in outside of that, right? Because I'm not sure how much you've played Marth in the opposite this matchup, but basically all you really need to know is that Marth's main goals, of course, which is kind of what you're struggling with right now, is how well can you push Marth or how well can you push Falco into the corner, like you mentioned, and how well can you control the ground, right? The second Marth gets in the air, Falco has all the control in the world. So his main objective is to stay on the ground, right? Because then he
Hmm.
can get access to grabs. He still has access to crouch cancel. He can dash back, right? All those are some of Marth's strongest tools. Um, Whereas, like, sure, an aerial is great at catching up, like the startup of an aerial for Falco or a laser. You can get caught like I'm sure you've had it before, where like you're short hopping about to do a laser and you just get tipper F smashed or forward air or nared or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That could be annoying, but at the same time, it kind of limits all of Marth's ability to get around lasers, right? Because he's a floaty, he can't really like full hop over lasers as well as like Fox or Falcon or some other type of
Hmm.
characters. So for him, Sheik, I don't know if you would argue Jigglypuff, but for the floaty characters, it's a lot more of a commitment to make a jump, right? So that's why a lot of the time they're opting to be either like grounded or maybe sometimes in Sheik's case, like they may want to be on a platform so they can get an easy like shield drop aerial or jump away kind of thing. So I'll give you my code and maybe we can just connect and get in a game just so I can kind of show you example like moves or situations where
Sounds good.
these types of things might come up. But um, just really quick,
Awesome.
when you shoot let's talk about laser play, right? Because I feel like that's like the most important um, aspect of this matchup. So when you talk about, keeping Marth from getting you in the corner, right? What uh, what types of things outside of laser would you say are your go tos?
Outside of laser, that's a good question. I
And
would
what?
say oftentimes going in with like either aerial or like empty shine.
Okay, he's empty shine. So can you give me an example of that? Just like run off like this kind of thing.
Like laser and then yeah, like laser shines
Okay,
like as much as possible. And
gotcha.
also a lot of back airs. I tend to go for a lot of shield throws and a lot of little back airs.
Okay, for sure. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna pick Falco just so I can give you some ideas of what I like to
Nice.
do with them too. Um, so yeah, no, for sure. I would say those are all great options. And I mean, when I said outside of laser, I meant more specifically like if you're doing this laser, like are you doing it in place and then something like a down air in front of you or like down air nair, down air down or laser down tilt, sorry, laser shine, like you mentioned. One that's I think is really good is from the opposite perspective where you have Marth cornered is laser F tilt, right? That's like a super huge range in front of you. That's like pretty
Hmm.
unpunishable. Um, So those are like kind of, in my opinion, like some of your best options for laser, right? Laser grab is okay, but sometimes it's a little committal. But I mean, it's a good mix-up for sure. But I think basically what you need to know is that your options outside of a laser. So when I meant outside of a laser, I didn't mean like instead of one. I meant like what comes after the laser, right? That's what Marth is really scared of, right? Because like I hit you with a laser, it literally just did 2%. You don't care, right?
Yeah.
But if I hit you with like laser nair, like all of a sudden that's a lot more than 2% and a lot scarier for what comes after, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty much like your main objective in this matchup, to keep your kind of self like not cornered. The laser is good. Like we talk about like why the laser is so broken. It's because from this range in particular, there's not a single thing you can do that you can true punish me for doing this laser, right? With Marth, if you try and nair over it, I can shield and it'll cover it, right? If I know you're gonna jump, I can do laser up tilt, I can do laser down air, laser nair, right? I could dash back, I could do laser like this, right? Give you space. So from like about a roll's distance away, you have all the advantage in the world, right? It's up to you to make a decision. That's why Falco's so strong of a character. And you have to kind of keep in mind, Marth is trying to stay on the ground, and he's doing everything he can to get in between this laser and get to you, right? So
Yeah.
to kind of not get yourself cornered as much, if you don't want to play like this, I think it's the best way to play Falco. But if you can just stay at this distance all the time and just force lasers and make them overcommit to something, right? Because eventually they're going to get sick of just getting hit by laser over and over, right? They're going to try doing bad nairs, which you can just down air or dash back and come back in with an aerial like this, or sorry, like this. They're going to try and sneak under you with like dash attack, which you can just do like laser shield, get a wave dash punish. Do forward air, which might just straight up get eaten by the laser a lot of time, then you can get laser F smash. So a lot of it really comes down to maintaining your stage control with the laser, right? And trying to keep the information in your head of what are they doing in the game, like what common options are they repeatedly going for, so that you can kind of get your opening against them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's pretty much what I would suggest in terms of like game plan. You want to stay committed from this distance as much as possible. If you don't want to play a super laser campy heavy Falco, which I totally get, it gets a little boring. My advice, if you're going to approach, which you can with Falco, don't get me wrong, the laser is really great at catching dash back. My advice would be to try and keep in mind, once again, what are they doing outside of the laser, right? So we talked about like different options Marth has to like try and counterattack you for shooting a laser, right? But in terms of like what can he do to kind of like play a passive game if he knows you're going to approach, really he has a couple options, and they're all movement related. He can shield, he can power shield, or he can dash in between, right? So something that's like really underrated oftentimes with Marth is just getting hit by a laser and then doing dash back, right? People talk about that all the time. But the underrated one is getting hit by the laser and then dashing forward into Falco right after. And that's something Falcos aren't ready for a lot of the time. The reason why that dash forward is so underrated for a Marth player is because it's so common, right? All Falcos think is, all Marths want to do is dash back, right? But if you do a laser and you're overshooting an aerial, try and catch a dash back, right? That leaves this giant window, right, where Marth can just jump right underneath, right? Or, sorry, dash right underneath. See? And now all of a sudden you're behind the Falco, and maybe then you dash back in and grab him, or at least you get center stage, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
It's something a lot of Falcos don't kind of consider while they're playing. They just kind of see it happen, and maybe they'll adapt. But that's what you need to be doing, is if you're going to be the one approaching all the time, you want to be keeping in mind, what options did they just do? I shot a laser at them. How did they react, right? And if you can keep a kind of a list in your head, it just makes approaches that much easier. Because if you see like, oh, they're just trying to fight it with an aerial every time, that makes it so easy for you to just wait, right, until you get a good laser.
Yeah.
Because once you get that juicy laser against like an opening where they try and do an aerial, you're in, right? And I'm sure you already know
Yeah.
that, but that's kind of like the whole game plan I guess you're going for, right? Against Marth is how are you pacing this game around your lasers? Are you doing it defensively, aggressively? What are they doing? And that's kind of how you make your decisions in the game.
Gotcha.
Do you have any questions about that?
That all makes sense so far.
Okay.
Well
So
said.
I think in terms of like how you deal with getting out of the corner once you're there. So when you say in the corner, why don't you position Martha where you're finding it most like difficult to get around?
I'd say like around here.
Okay. Well, if that's the case, this is a really good range for you then, right? Because it's kind of like we talked about before, the range where you can just kind of spam laser untouched. Where it gets a little tricky is if he's like here, right? Here, you're totally fine. Here, very scary. And obviously, like dash dancing can make this a lot worse. But at least you know if Marth is dash dancing like here, he can't do anything like F smash. So if you get a Marth dash dancing, it's not as scary as you might think from this distance, right? If you do like, say you do like neutral get up from ledge, right? This isn't so bad because he can't really dash and grab. You have your lasers to protect you. He has to do an aerial, whether it be forward air or nair. But you can tell if he's dash dancing in between like here, where it's a little scarier for F smash, right? Because then you might get got. Or here, where he's just like in your face kind of thing. You know he can't F smash unless he's crazy and goes for like a pivot like that or something.
Yeah.
Which chances are most Marths aren't going to pressure you like that in the corner. They do their pivots out of like a dash back bait or something. So it's not as bad as you might think. If you catch onto a Marth who does that F smash, maybe get ready to shield and roll or something. But generally speaking, when you're doing your neutral get up range, right, this is so broken to just force them away. Eventually they're gonna lose patience, right, and they're gonna overcommit with an aerial. They can't do anything else other than grab, shield, or just take a laser and get through you. But if you're committed to just do this out of the corner, you have so much space to just like laser roll. Laser nair is really strong. I would opt for, more often than not, laser nair like this instead of laser down air, just because it's a little more safe on like miss, or even if you like hit their shield, like you can kind of get away with it better. But obviously, like we haven't talked about this yet, but the most broken technique for Falco to get out of the corner that Marth just has to respect if you get consistent enough with it is his ledge dash, right? I'm not even that great at ledge dashing with Falco just because I like main Marth, obviously. But like this covers that entire range you were talking about, right? If Marth dash dancing in front of you, if you get consistent at it, right, and are just able to like get out of there and like you can just do like a runaway. You could do an instant shine. You could do like wave dash, ledge dash shield. Like ledge dash shield honestly is a little underrated just in terms of like keeping you safe. I know players like Aklo will use that quite often, where people see him as like a defensive fox, but that's mostly just because he's not like literally ledge dashing in on the game and you know, going like balls to the wall, which kind of people expect a lot, I feel like, in Melee.
Yeah.
But ledge dash is like a get out of jail free card really for Falco, and Fox too, but it kind of keeps him safe from being like forcefully trapped like Peach or Marth sometimes would be. So I mean, in terms of that, like you do have options for getting off the ledge. But it's the corner that gets a little bit more difficult for sure. And really though, I feel like the number one thing you got to be looking out for if you're gonna shoot lasers out of the corner like this would be F smash, right? Because it's so easy for Marth to be at a certain distance and just rip an F smash that gets your jump while you're trying to shoot a laser, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you're not invincible, but like even this, like that covers so much range, right? You could shoot a laser to cover the neutral get up, right, and then put shield where they pressure with the F tilt where they would be. Just really strong in general. And in my opinion, if you know they're close, like it works the same way. Although if you get close enough, like laser shine kind of gives you all the freedom in the world, right? You get any mix up you want out of shine. Granted,
Yeah.
it's a mix-up at the end of the day, so it's not guaranteed, but you do get something.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I would advise for like getting out of the corner. Like I said, like to kind of keep yourself from getting in the corner and like winning neutral, a lot of that depends around your laser play. And there are certain things you got to be aware of. Like if Marth is crouching facing the other way, like crouch the way you're facing right now, and then just try and shield one of these lasers. Like see how easy it is to power shield that?
Oh wow.
It's Marth has a bug shield in the game. So, and like other Marths will practice this a lot more, right? But basically what you need to know is that when he faces the other direction, especially when he's doing something like a dash back, if you try dash backing and shielding these, it becomes a lot easier. So there's like there's a couple cues you might want to look out for, and for like spacing purposes, like the turning away shield crouch, like I mentioned, so he gets a power shield. Or if he's like a rolled, like at this distance away, you really don't want to be shooting lasers too much, right? Because any F smash will just tip her at this range. So be careful like here versus like here maybe. I know that may be hard to decipher in a game, but you could kind of think of it as like a full Falco jab away from him, pretty much, is what you need to be looking out for.
Gotcha.
But yeah, generally speaking, like on stage game plan, right? It's all dependent on how well are you using your lasers. How well can you manage space to kind of push Marth towards the corner? But for you getting out of the corner, like I said, it's more about like the ranges of which Marth can threaten something. So like if he's dash dancing, you know he doesn't have access to F smash, so he really only has shield, grab, or an aerial, all of which will loosen aerial, and that gives you free pressure opportunity. If you find he's getting too close to you where you're gonna get grabbed and you can't throw out a laser because of that S smash like we talked about, retreating to ledge, right? Doing things like Firebird stall, which I never practice, so I can't really do it very well. But like this is really great because then you can get a free ledge dash if you get the timing for that. Right, and then once you get your ledge dash, you know, Marth just kind of has to respect it, right? There's nothing Marth can really do to kind of pressure like ledge dash F smash or ledge dash down air or nair, right? He just has to kind of give you that free space.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all that boils down to in terms of like getting out of the corner. I mean, obviously there's mix-ups, and how you're gonna play these spacings and mix-ups kind of depend on the level your opponent's playing, what options they're threatening. But really, that's pretty much the basics of it. I'll link you some videos. I also have some really good resources for a Marth player on how to deal with Falco in the corner. But I think those would be helpful for you just to like get an understanding of like what does Marth want from the opposite's perspective, because that gives you ways to think about that. You know.
That sounds super helpful.
But yeah, any other questions about Marth versus Falco in the corner, or I guess just the matchup in general?
I'd say no questions so far.
Okay. Well, that does leave us with quite a bit of time. I'd be happy to give you a couple games if you want to try and practice that situation a little bit. We could talk about it then.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Or if anything comes up that else you want to talk about, like we can absolutely get into that too.
That would be great. And if you notice anything that's kind of like, especially, I would say like erroneous in how I'm playing the matchup, definitely let me know. I'm definitely interested in any feedback that comes
for sure.
up.
Okay, cool. Let's get into it. Okay. So two things that jump out to me very quickly. They're not super important right now, just because I don't think we really ran into situations much where like I was going to punish you for it. But I think definitely something to consider, just in terms of like resource management. So number one for sure is double jumping at a hit stun. It's a pretty like new player technique, and I know, or like habit, I guess. And I know you say you've only been playing for 2 years, so that's something I would definitely want you to get rid of pretty quickly. I mean, I know I saw you doing stuff like shield drop and stuff like that. So, I mean, I know you know how to play clearly, but for sure, have you seen like videos talking about double jumping at a hit stun before? And like
No,
why it's bad? Okay, so basically, this is like, and I'm not calling you this. It's just what it's called usually, but it's like the number one noob killer in Melee, or like a chump check. So
yeah,
it's basically just a knowledge check. It's one of those things where like if you know to not do it, you're fine. However, if you can't get past it, or like your opponent catches on that you have this habit, your chances of winning just go down that much more, just because it's so super easy getting an early kill. So basically all it is, I don't have an app to draw. I need to get that. I keep trying to get on myself for it. But basically all you need to know is like from here, where I just side beat, so like here to probably like here, or probably more accurately like here. Imagine just like a big circle around the ledge here where I'm like kind of like double jumping to.
Yeah.
That's like a range where you absolutely cannot double jump in Melee. There's nothing in the game telling you that you can't, and you'll never read anything about it in like an official guide or anything like double jumping is bad here. But in competitive Melee, this is like a death sentence, right? I mean, Marth F Smash is kind of like a comedic example about it, but like it literally covers that entire range, right? The reason why you don't want to double jump in this range, I mean, it sounds kind of obvious when you think about it, but if you lose your double jump here, you're forced to use your up B here, and then when Falco's forced to use his up B, he's dead. You know, I guess any single character in the game.
100%.
So when it comes to like, and that's just an example where you're like straight away dead off it, right? But even if you're at say something like 20 or 30%, right, you can double jump back to the stage, and maybe you don't die in the blast zone or get sent like way down here from it, and you still have access to your side B or something, right? And you get hit over here, and all you have to do is side B. The number one thing people are going to be looking for the second they realize that double jump is gone is the side B, and if it's just one option they have to cover, if they're good, they're going to hit it every time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's pretty much like a quick breakdown of like resource management in Melee for recovery. Like if you can get away with just using one recovery move, like when I say that, I mean like not double jumping and using up B only or something, which is kind of hard, I know, with Falco sometimes, just because you don't want to tap jump. But it is something you got to get used to, just trying to use up B without tap jump. Like KJH has a video about it versus Jigglypuff, where like if you're like up B versus Jigglypuff and she comes down with forward air, but you saved your up B because you didn't tap jump up B to do your tap jump, to do your up B, like if she hits you with forward air, then all of a sudden now you can double jump backwards and then side B back on stage when Jigglypuff is still falling below doing forward air, right?
I see. So wait, so actually this is new to me actually, the tap jump thing. So tap jump, like, is there another way to do up B?
Yeah, pretty much the same input you would do for like up tilt from the ground. Just press B and then you can up B, right? But a lot of people just kind of assume that. So yeah, do an up tilt like this.
So I'm actually, one thing that might be strange is I'm on box.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I asked that at the beginning. Yeah. Okay. Well, if you're on box, then I'm pretty sure I used to have a frame 1 for a while, so I'm pretty familiar with it.
Okay.
So I think it would just be mod X and then up, which would be your pinky, and then B, right? Maybe it's mod Y.
Oh yeah, okay.
There you go. But I think you...
Oh, okay.
So see if you can do... Now, the tricky thing about recovery moves in Melee, and to be fair, I don't know the exact details behind this because I know it's a little bit specific per character, But there are certain moves in the game where if you use them, you don't get your double jump, even if you had it. So like, I know if you're recovering with like Falco side B and Marth hits you out of it, you can't double jump afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of like I mentioned before, like it's extremely important. Like if you were like just using side B, right? Sometimes like you want to have all your options available versus like being forced to only use one. So yeah, but I know up B is one for sure. It's tricky because like some people just slam, like I know on GameCube controller, they just slam the stick up, or even on box, right? They just press the up button and B to recover, which like you can do, and for some characters, not really that bad. But generally speaking, if you can, yeah, you want to do it with just a tilt input. Which on box I think is a little bit easier just because you have a button for it, right? You don't risk pressing that. You just have to press an extra button.
So it's okay. So it's really just adding the mod Y into the FE. It's pretty simple. Yeah.
I think so, right? Mod Y is the one that gives you up tilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, no, actually, that's mod X.
Okay. So and can you do the up B with mod X?
I actually can't. Yeah, that turns it into laser.
It may just end up being a ban technique on box. I'm not sure, but it could also be
possible.
Why don't you try doing the up B in the air with the mod Y?
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah,
So
I don't see any double jump
Y.
moves. Okay, so do it again, like right up where you're doing it, and then I'm gonna hit you, and let's see if you can double jump.
Let's see. Let me try that again.
There's a double jump. I heard it.
Wait, sorry, I missed that one.
That's okay. You're probably gonna have to be at high percent for it to like be actually like worthwhile. So I'm gonna hit you up a little bit. Okay, that should be fine. So let's get in the center now, and I'm just gonna hit you with weak up airs.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Oh wait, I forgot to hold a mod key.
It's okay. So I'm gonna hit you with up tilts, and you just try and double jump out of them.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh,
see, you can. Okay, so yeah, so you can do it on box. So yeah, basically that's what you need to know.
Mod Y.
Yeah, so get in the habit. Use your mod Y button for when you're using your up B. Just in general, that'll really, really help you long term. I'll link you the KJH video I'm talking about so you can get a real picture of it. But in general too, right? This range right here, it's the no-fly zone. What do you got to think of it as? You cannot use your double jump here, and especially like if I were to hit you with something like forward air, right, and you recover, you can't always just instantly mash your double jump out of that forward air. Even though like there, like you started dipping below the stage, that's fine, right? Then there's an example where you could do it and get away with it. But if you're consistently doing it over and over, that's something that can be really, really scary. And I'll link you a video on that, just talking about it a little bit more in depth. But
that's a really good tip, though. I had no idea.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
No, it's no worries. Like it's the number one like new player thing that you gotta get rid of. Like melee players who go over to ultimate, they catch people doing that so quick in that game, and that's when they start mashing air dodge only, and then it just becomes like in ultimate recoveries have a lot more options, right? And that's why some people like the game a lot more. But when melee players go over to it, and if they have a little bit of control of their character, right, they catch those double jumps so quick. So then ultimate players, like they're just forced, they either die or they start mashing air dodge, and then it just becomes that more one-dimensional, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like the last thing you want in a game. So we'll play another game. We'll see if we find some any other habits, but for sure, I would say if you take anything out of this lesson, although I do think like getting the answers you want for laser out of the corner or just Falco in the corner in general, it's helpful.
Yeah.
I think
super helpful.
Yeah, number one takeaway, if anything, should be that double jump thing because that applies to every single matchup in the game.
Gotcha.
So yeah, let's try another one.
Falco, ready? Go!
Nice. Easy. Oh wait, out of stock.
Very good.
No.
Okay. So another thing I want to talk to you about is using laser, right? So we just played that game. Let's see if you took some of the things I was talking about earlier. It's okay if you didn't. I know it's all random new information. What would you say was my number one habit of dealing with laser?
That's a good question. I actually can't
It's
say
okay.
exactly.
It's okay. So that's what I want you to be looking for when you're playing against Marth from now on. Like I mentioned before, a lot of it, this matchup comes down to laser, right? And Falco is the one who's going to be initiating it at all times. So you need to be paying attention to what options is Marth doing when I shoot a laser, where is he going to, and what is he acting outside of that, right? So I'll give you the answer because I was intentionally doing it for I was giving you two options I was repeatedly just spamming. If you were on the ground shooting lasers, I was just staying grounded, like I mentioned before, doing dashes, and I was shielding and power shielding them back to you, or at least trying to. You know, sometimes I don't get it, and then I'm forced to shield.
Yeah.
But when you're on the ground, that's what you're going to be looking for the most against a Marth, is what are they doing out of your laser? Because that gives you an answer of like how you can approach them. And I think that's another thing which your Falco kind of stands out to me. I don't know how you play against Fox and Falco, if you like to just go in a lot, but at least against Marth, it seems like you're scared to approach. And I don't mean to say that you're campy. I just mean like gave you a couple openings that game where like you can definitely rush in with an aerial and start putting on some pressure, but instead you're kind of doing like a slower laser behind. And when I mean slower laser, I just mean like a non-fast fold one. So that's the impression that gives me you're scared, right? It's not only are you not taking the openings, but like it seems like you're a little bit like messing up tech skill for the laser, if that makes sense. Just missing the fast one. But that's a very common sign,
true.
right? So we'll play another game just with that in mind, because we won't go into it super deep like the double jump thing. But let's talk about, or let's try and focus on what options am I doing with the laser. And if you have any questions about like how do I beat this, or why is this hard to beat, or something like that, we'll talk about that. But maybe another thing too, I'll just say it really quick. A common habit with new players that they run into. I know you're playing for 2 years, and I'm sorry for saying new player. It's just
no
2 years in Melee feels like nothing sometimes, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people don't talk about this. Top players will not tell you about this because they just assume everybody does it. To them, it's obvious. For the average player, it's something that's not very common. When people talk about in guides and stuff when it comes to movement in Melee, they talk about like your number one goal, right, is complete control of your character at any point. You can think it and you can do it, right? Which lets you do the following thing, which is you want to be able to always keep your eyes on your opponent. And this matchup, I would argue, is one of the most important matchups when it comes to keeping your eyes on your opponent. And when I say that, I don't mean you're not paying attention or anything like that. I literally mean your eye focus should be on Marth the entire time, because one, it lets you visually react to things he's doing, but two, your reactions become a lot faster, right? It's a lot harder to react to things that are in your peripheral vision, but So like, let's say you were trying to react to the startup of a forward air from Marth or something. Like, you might be able to react to that in your peripheral vision if you're looking at Falco or like the space between you guys. But if you're looking at Marth, not only can you react to that forward air just a lot better, but you can react to his movement, like coming up between it, to do that forward air a lot easier too, right? So that forward air just becomes that much more easier. So we're gonna play another game. And number one thing you're looking for, like I said, is what options am I doing at the laser? And you can even say it if you want in the middle of the game. I won't judge. But just like try and keep like a mental list in your head about like options that I'm doing, and play maybe like situations or places on the stage where it's happening a lot, and then see if you can adapt mid-game and like punish me for doing those things. Okay?
Gotcha.
Okay, cool. Let's jump into it.
Versus Falco. Ready? Go!
GG.
Oh shoot. GG. Okay, so that game. What was my number one most used option out of laser?
Power shield.
Exactly. Power shield or just shield in general, right? I rarely did dash dance and take laser dash dance, right? Rarely did an aerial over them. if you went to a platform, I was just chasing you until you got back on the ground, right? Just to do the shield again. And I think you started to approach a little bit more because of that, right? Like you started doing the laser shines on shield, stuff like that. Those things matter in a game, right? Some people just see them as like random options, like, oh, he's close to me, I'm going to do that. But if you can kind of keep an eye out for like, okay, this Marth is clearly just spamming shield against laser, like you can win off that, right? I mean, that game was a lot closer.
Yeah.
And like, cause like if some people, like just in like tournament melee at least, like some people are not thinking that straight of like what options are they doing repeatedly, and that's what you need to be looking out for the most. You can literally play tournament melee a lot of the time by like if you just catch on to one person's habit and you punish them as hard as you can for it, they're losing so much harder than you are, right? Because they're trying to play like, oh, Falco's on a platform, like what options does he have, blah blah blah. But if you can just not care if you know one option they're gonna spam over and over, right? And why Falco becomes such a good character is because he has a tool like laser which lets you repeat that option over and over and over if they're not playing for it, you know?
Yeah.
So
that's a very good point.
that's your strength in this matchup. Is that's your biggest tool, your biggest advantage, sometimes your biggest weakness if you can't catch on to their habits, but for sure your biggest strength if you can, right?
Yeah.
One other thing that I think is worth mentioning, because I was spamming shield, I get that it's power shield, and we don't have to get into it right now just because like one, we only have 15 minutes, but two, like I think it is a little bit complicated for now for what you need. But like sometimes I know you noticed it was power shield instead of just like regular shield, right?
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, like Marth kind of has some quirks with his power shield in terms of like if he's crouching or if he's doing a dash back, like sometimes power shield becomes a lot easier for him just because he's broken as a character. But generally speaking, like they're not going to power shield it every time. It's just impossible. And there's certain laser heights that you can do. Like there's an Ober video on that. I think it's Laser Heights by Ober, of like different laser heights that are like really difficult to do with Marth. But even then, I think that's really complicated. A lot of the time, you kind of can just spam lasers, and they're gonna end up in shield, right? I would argue that shield is one of the best places for you to have Marth in this matchup, and you need to be ready to kind of keep Marth in shield or hit him or punish him for using shield, right? So like, I noticed you caught on, and I'm glad you did, about that I was using shield a lot, but then you kind of have to get used to like, how are you going to deal with me using shield, right? And then you got to deal with it at different ranges, and shield is one of the most common like options in the game, so you have to know how to deal with shielding. So I know it's obvious and you already know it probably, but like grab beats shield no matter what spacing, right? Like if you hit a grab, it'll always beat their shield. So grab, you gotta, even though like some people are like, oh, Falco sucks off grab, blah blah blah, he doesn't. Falco has some really good moves off grab. You can set up some amazing combos, especially on Marth with it. You got to be able to use grab on shield, and don't be afraid to do it. It's not a bad move. It's just, there's just people will do it at bad timing sometime. Otherwise, though, if you're just in the mood for pressing buttons, Shine Nair is a great move. Shine Fade Back Nair. You could do Shine Down Nair, Double Shine, Shine Grab. You have tons of options with how you deal with shield, and you don't have to be linear with it either, right? You can. The greatest strength Falco has, like Fox, all the same, is what options they have and how fast they're able to do it. So, like, if you get someone in shield, sure, it is possible if they get a grab at the right time, like if they shield grab or do an aerial, they could beat it. But you have so many options to deal with shield and anything they decide to do out of it. Theoretically, you could cover everything. It's not bad to be on Marth's shield. Don't be afraid. You just have to be confident in what you're going for, and if you realize it doesn't work, pick something else or just back off. But you want to be able to keep them in shield as much as you possibly can, and if they're giving it to you for free at a laser, capitalize on it as much as possible, because that's how you push them into the corner and get your advantage too, or just a straight up neutral win if you guess right, you know?
Very true.
Yeah, that's the strength about Falco and Falco Marth. His ball's always in his court kind of thing. And it's just up to him to not mess up, or if Marth starts adapting, play a little different, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Let's do another one. Just trying to keep in mind the things we talked about. So how you're dealing with spacings, keeping your eyes on your opponent, not double jumping, and keeping a list of what they're doing at a laser.
Got it.
Cool.
Versus Falco. Ready? Go!
Oops. GG.
Jeez. Okay. That game. What was my number one most used option at laser?
Usually take laser dash in.
Yep. Take laser dash in general. I mix up both dash in, dash back, just so you can kind of get an idea of like, what spacings or what moves to do in. But like when it comes to how do you beat take laser dash in, right? Just down air in place destroys that, right? Beats it up really
Oh,
bad.
nice.
Take laser dash back, down air forward beats that, right? So like a dash forward, down air kind of thing. So that's really easy to beat, right? You can just do laser down air pretty much to beat dash. It makes it kind of a lot easier. Where it gets complicated, and I think I only did it like once or twice, is if you get in the habit of not doing low lasers, which do take longer to come out, like then maybe Marth, if he's just dashing all over the place, maybe he does the dash attack, which will like scoop you up for doing a high laser. So you want to get in the habit, if you know there are Marth that does a dash, like they just do take laser and then they do a dash over it a lot. You want to be able to do dash attacks a lot, or avoid dash attacks by just doing a low laser. One thing we haven't talked about today in terms of like how to deal with lasers for Marth, which you have to be aware of as Falco, is take laser forward air. And I know a lot of Marths will talk about like, oh, the best thing ever to deal with Falco is like, take laser forwarder. It's so good. Zane does it all the time. He talks about take laser fair all the time. And it's true. Take laser forwarder is very strong. However, there are many different laser heights and laser spacings between like Falco and the laser that can really blow up take laser forwarder. Take laser forwarder is a thing to be aware of, and sometimes you maybe get caught by it, but kind of like what we talked about earlier today, if you're able to catch on to they're doing certain things like that, like short hopping all over the place and being in the air, right? You can get up there and be really close with like like with a laser forward tilt. That's a strong combo. Like laser F smash, laser shine, laser jab. Those all will like beat something like take laser forward air if you get it at the right height and right spacing. And kind of like we said before, like it's really just a matter of like keeping track of what you're doing, and what they're doing, and then like just adapting from there, right? So if you don't know all the like some of your stronger options for like how to deal with Marth doing a certain move or after a certain laser, like if you're like, I don't know what to do if he does like take laser and then just like mashes jab or something, like how do I beat that with Falco? Maybe it's a good idea, write down a list of options that you think you have and then kind of go back and do some VOD review and check that out. And like in any VODs that you've struggled with in the past, I would definitely recommend after you watch back this replay of our session together, because I do think the number one thing people miss out on after doing something like a Metafy session is they don't go back and watch the VOD, which is why I think having it recorded is most important. Go back, take some notes, stuff we talked about. I know there's a million different things we talked about. It's impossible to kind of like all suck it up and have it like melt in your brain for a while, after just one session. It's impossible. So you have this resource forever. I would always recommend go back and watch it, take notes. Don't only watch it once. Don't only do the session without watching it. Watch it a couple times whenever you feel like you're lost, because this is a great resource that you have now. Not to build myself up or anything, but you know what I mean. Like there's tons of things we talked about, so there's tons of information that could potentially help you out later. So yeah, always go back, and I would suggest go back and watch some of the matches maybe you struggle with against people in particular in the past. Maybe you ran into a marathon unranked or something that just completely blew you up and you have no idea why. Maybe go back with the lens of what did they do at a laser, and now you can kind of take that and study it, and then you can approach the matchup in a new way for when you play in the future.
Absolutely.
So definitely I would recommend doing any of that. Any questions before we end things off here? I know we're just about running out of time now.
I'd say no, you went over everything perfectly. That was all really good information. I'll keep working on this, and yeah, I'm looking forward to scheduling another session with you in the future. That was super helpful.
Oh, honestly, I appreciate that, man. Thank you. No, that's great. I'm really happy to hear. So like I said, I will link you a couple videos about the KJH video about keeping your upbeat, the no double jumping in the corner. I'll link you a couple Ginger videos because I know he's done VOD analysis before about Marth versus Falco. I think those would be worthwhile watching.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned, there's a really, really great Marth resource on like how Marth likes to deal with a lot of Falco options that I have. And I think that would be good for you to have too, just so you can kind of puzzle it from the opposite perspective. And then maybe like start brainstorming about like what you can do to beat that. So yeah, that'd be cool. And I know you mentioned booking another session with me in the future. If you are interested, by no means is it necessary, but Metafy does have testimonials on their page. I think now they even have written testimonials, so you don't have to record yourself.
Oh, cool.
But if you are willing to leave a testimonial, you do get 30% off any lesson you choose to book in the future. So definitely worth checking out. I know Metafy does 30% off sales all the time, but this is one you can just redeem at any point you want. So definitely something cool to have if you're interested. But yeah, I'd say that
they do written ones actually. I had no idea. That fits me a lot better than a video one.
Yeah,
so I'm super down.
It's super new, and like I even on like my testimonials, like I never ask people to like put their face in it because I know people get uncomfortable with that. So like I just have them like record Falco or like Marth or whoever on screen and just put their voice over. I think that's a lot easier sometimes too. But yeah, if you want to leave that, I would really appreciate it. It helps me out a ton, but also helps you out a bit. But it's not necessary by any means. It's totally okay.
That is awesome though. Very happy to know about that feature.
For sure. But yeah, I think we'll end it for here. If you do have any questions in the future, absolutely, you can always DM me and ask me questions about the game. If it's something that like super quick, I'll always answer it. You don't have to book for that. But if it's
Thank
something
you.
that I think that like goes a little bit more in depth, we may need to book a session for it. I'll let you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, for sure, I really appreciate it. Glad to get the chance to meet you, get to talk to you for the first time. Um,
Likewise.
yeah, and I
It's been
hope
a
we have
pleasure.
yeah for sure. And yeah, I hope we can have another session in the future. It'd be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Good luck in Toronto.
Thanks,
I'm
man. I
excited to
appreciate it.
see how things go.
I appreciate it. Thanks
Oh
a
yeah.
lot. Cool. We'll talk again soon.
All right. Thanks again for your time.
No
Take
worries.
care.
Bye now.